Alrighty, so our next thing to have a look at is negative indices. Now, before I get started, an important thing to note is our laws so far. So if I multiply terms, a to the power of n times a to the power of m, I just add those powers. Same deal if I divide, I subtract the second from the first. If I've got some brackets involved, so if I've got a to the power of m all to the n, that's a to the power of m times n. And if I've got a to the power of 0, that's just 1. If I've got 2a to the power of 0, that's just 2. Because of course that has a power of 1. And if I've got a to the power of 1, that's just the same as a. So those laws still stand true here. Okay, we're not doing something different, we're just adding to our set of rules. So to do this, we're going to do a little proof. I'm going to go and say I've got b to the power of 5 divided by b to the power of 6. Okay, so that would be b to the power of 5 minus 6, which is b to the power of minus 1. Okay, now the other way I could write this is to say it's b times b times b times b times b. That's just b to the 5 over b times b times b times b times b times b. Okay, I hope you agree with me there. Now what I will end up doing to simplify this is I'll say each one of these will simplify down to a pair of factors of 1. Okay, there's no need to do this, by the way, when you're actually answering the question, but this is just to show you what ends up happening. So what we're left with on top is 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1. Well, that's just 1 over the same thing times b. So our little next law ends up being that if I have anything with a negative power, I can write that as 1 over that term. Okay, so if I have a negative power, it's the same as writing 1 over that. Or another way to say it is anything to the power of minus 1 is the same as its reciprocal. Reciprocal, you might have heard that word when you divide fractions. If we divide by a fraction, we multiply by the reciprocal. It simply means we flip that over, or write it as 1 over that. That's all reciprocal means, and this is kind of our next law to add in there onto this list as well. So if I've got anything to the power of minus 1, it's just 1 over that. Alrighty, so if I've got something like m to the power of minus 3, well, I would write that as 1 over m cubed. Now if I've got something like m to the minus 3, n to the minus 2, well, again, a negative index we write as a fraction. This is just two things, by the way. That's m to the minus 3 multiplied by n to the minus 2, which is 1 on m cubed times 1 on n squared. Can't just add those powers because they have different bases. But what we can do is write that as, if I multiply fractions, 1 times 1 over m cubed times n squared. Okay, so if we look back up here, everything that has a negative index for me ends up being in the denominator. Now if we keep doing the same sort of thing, if I've got something like mn to the minus 1. Okay, well the important thing to note here is that m actually has a power of 1. So that we treat differently. So this is m to the 1 times n to the minus 1. Well, that's just m times 1 over n, which is m over 1 times 1 over n, which is m over n. So the next little thing we can sort of add into our skill set is that if I have a positive index, that goes to the numerator. If I have a negative index, that goes to the denominator. Okay? So anything with a negative index will go to the denominator, anything with a positive index will go to the numerator. Same sort of thing, if I've got minus 5 a squared b to the minus 2. Alrighty, something else to note. This negative it just means we have a negative number. That does not mean it changes our indices in any way. I'm just going to write down that negative straight away because the whole term is negative. So I've got 5 times a squared times 1 over b squared. Of course, my negative index here means I take the reciprocal of that, which means I have minus 5a squared over b squared. Again, no simplifying of these ones because they have a different base. Okay, they're not the same base. What about if I've got something like this? What if I've got a over b all to the power of minus 1? Okay, well this is a bracket scenario, and I could go and rewrite what's inside the brackets as a to the 1 times b to the minus 1. Again, because whatever I've got in my denominator has a negative index, and whatever I've got in my numerator has a positive index. Now that's all to the power of minus 1 there. So my laws for powers involving brackets is still the same, so I would just multiply that power outside by the 2 powers inside, and I'll end up with a to the minus 1, b to the positive 1. Well, the way I can rewrite that, the b is in the numerator, the a is in the denominator, both just have a power of 1. And really, what this here is saying, if I have anything to the power of minus 1, okay, if the power is minus 1, that means I take the reciprocal. Now the reciprocal of a over b is b over a. Just like the reciprocal of 2 over 3 is 3 over 2. Okay, so if I have anything with a negative power like that, I end up taking the reciprocal. The reciprocal of 1 over something is just that number, so the reciprocal of 1 over 5 is just 5. The reciprocal, though, of something like 3 over 2 is 2 over 3.